This is lecture 79A on the primitive communism of hunting and gathering in West and Central Africa. We'll be dealing mostly with hunting and gathering in this particular lecture. And this is not a very long lecture, but I want to get you situated geographically, because West and Central Africa is a geographically vast region, and it's actually all of this area. And it consists, in alphabetical order, of Angola, the Benin Republic, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Cape Verde, Chad, the Central African Republic, CAR, in other words, or the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, Nigeria, Republic of the Congo, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Sao Tome and Principe, and Togo. Most have lower Paleolithic sites containing Homo-manufactured tools of the Oldowan, Acheulean, and Lavoisian archaeological types. In other words, this part of the globe has the first evidence for primitive communism anywhere in the world. African original hunting and gathering primitive communists had a mode of production that originated the primitive technology of pre-Oldowan, and then the Oldowan stone tool industries. And from this base came the primitive communists of the Middle Paleolithic, whose flake and core technology gave rise to the broad-spectrum wild resource exploitation of the Upper Paleolithic and Mesolithic. First, I want to take a look at the Lower Paleolithic from Namibia through Angola to Nigeria. We have seen just in the previous lecture how humans were in Namibia at the dawn of humanity several million years ago, and as we move northward out of Namibia into Angola, we know that J. Desmond Clark found a site with Oldowan tools just about 60 miles south of the Angolan capital of Luanda, and that dates about 2 million years now. So that gives us a good basic date to start with regard to the Lower Paleolithic. And at 2 million years ago, we're dealing with a very advanced Homo australopithecus, that is the first grade of humans, or a beginning Homo erectus, the second grade of humans. Clark made many Paleolithic finds in his time in northeast Angola, and that includes this whole area in here. So 2 volumes are especially useful for their contribution to the Paleolithic that he wrote, and one are the prehistoric cultures of northeast Angola and their significance in tropical Africa that he published in 1963, and 5 years later he published the book Further Paleoanthropological Studies in Northern Luanda, or Lunda. Now, evidence of the existence of early humans and their descendants have been found in northern, eastern, and southern Africa, and we've gone through a lot of that already. Therefore, it makes sense that they would have lived in West Africa as well, and these early humans and their descendants in Nigeria had to have invented the necessary means of production to handle their fundamental needs for food, water, shelter, defense, and escape from natural disasters. And we have the early dates of 2 million years on the Angolan coast, and the 4 million year old dates below that in Namibia. In Nigeria, the Paleolithic witnessed early humans leaving 4 distinct stone tool complexes that we think of as, where is Nigeria? Right there? Yep, that's it. Okay. Now, we have first a pebble tool stage. That is the kind of Oldowan tools that we would expect to see, where you have a hand-sized pebble that somebody picked up and knocks off 1 or 2 flakes in order to get a sharp cutting edge. The second is the Acheulean bifacial tool and hand axe tool stage. Thirdly, by Middle Paleolithic times, we have level wall flake tools, and finally in the Upper Paleolithic we have blade tools. So you have all four of exactly what we would expect to have in Nigeria. Nigerian early stone tools are pebbles modified for chopping and cutting and used for hunting and gathering. They are found in the following parts of Nigeria: the Jos Plateau, which I think is this plateau area right in here. My eyes are watering from the pollen in the air. The Afikpo in Imo, the Iwo Iluru, and in Ondo, and the Majiro in the old Oyo state. Now, so what we have there are the four distinct geographical areas in Nigeria, and in these areas, Nigerian stone tools are not only Oldowan in type, as the same exact type as those of Olduvai Gorge, and so that's an important. You're beginning to see, because we've already talked about East Africa and how that extends down into South Africa. Those Olduvai Gorge tools that Louis Leakey started to find over 50 years ago and publicized on National Geographic magazine and in the television show, it was actually a continental-wide stage, people using these kinds of pebble tools. And in your book, I'm going to go through the ape history that leads up to these humans, and some of those apes undoubtedly used rocks. They just didn't knock flakes off of them. But at any rate, that's another discussion. We have a special chapter on it in Volume 6. Now, these Nigerian stone tools, therefore, are representative of a continental-wide tool type, the older ones. And they are at least 2 million years old in Nigeria. Following them come the Acheulean tools that are hand axes, and clearly evolving from their oval or pointedly oval Acheulean predecessors, with cutting edges extended from one or two faces to being all around. And these Acheulean tools were carefully trimmed on both sides to achieve this all-around cutting utility. One variety of these stone tools are the cleavers, with straight transverse cutting edges, and they are of the same approximate date as the Acheulean tools found in France. The early form of Homo second grade, that is Homo erectus, probably made them, and the important thing about all of this, or the most important thing about all of this for us, is that these are the people that we have people living now for 2 million years as primitive communists, meaning that they shared everything, they didn't have any concepts of private property, and perhaps beyond anything, perhaps other than some ideologically important Tasman sort of thing that one might wear as an ornament, and they did this because that's the way they knew it was best to survive, by sharing everything among themselves. And this is, of course, the essence of primitive communism. At May Indon Toro in the Jos Plateau of Nigeria, there are 2 layers of gravel 11 meters above the present river level, separated by a clay layer, produced Acheulean cleavers. And at Pingal in the northern region of the Jos Plateau, more bifaces than cleavers were found, and off the plateau in the Nok Valley, more Acheulean materials were found in the form of cleavers. So there may be some reason that relates to the kinds of exploitation they found was useful with cleavers as opposed to the traditional hand axe shaped stone tool. It is likely that the high mountains of Jos Plateau and its surroundings prevented or checked the impact of the Saharan desertification. And you can see that that desert is moving in now Nigeria, that you can see the border real clearly. So, at any rate, early humans who lived over 45,000 years ago inhabited these regions of Nigeria, and these early Homo erectus stone-made humans made the stone and bone tools found in many parts of Nigeria, especially within the Jos Plateau region, because the Jos Plateaus had the best Pleistocene climate and weather conditions in Nigeria for humans for several million years. About 2.5 million to 1.5 million years ago, the European climate started to oscillate as a result of the impact of the glaciers, thereby creating extreme cold and heat in many parts of the world, including the Sahara. The increased rainfall during the first glacial age may have created steppes, savannas, and lakes in the Sahara, and may have opened routes across previously impassable deserts, thus aiding migrations to other places. During the period from 700 to 400,000 BP, there were climatic upheavals in the African Rift Valley, that's over on the east side. However, West Africa, in the high mountain plains and plateaus of the Jos Plateau, was stable because of its topographic formation. This favorable structure made it suitable for early humans and the animals they hunted. And now, along the way, as they became masters of their universe, they would have found the overriding need to offset the antisocial accumulation of surplus social product. And migration into challenging environments is the easiest way to make today's surplus into tomorrow's necessity. Now we come to the Middle Paleolithic, and in our scheme, every fossil of Homo after 1 million years ago is Homo sapiens. Archaeologically, the Middle Paleolithic of sub-Saharan Africa begins with the appearance of stone tools struck from carefully prepared level-wall tortoise-shaped cores 300,000 years ago. This innovation in tool making is associated with the rapid emergence of distinctive regional artifact styles and the effective abandonment of the large handheld hand axes and cleavers that were the hallmark of the preceding Acheulean. This technological change reflected a fundamental shift in food procurement strategies, now focusing on broad-spectrum wild resource exploitation. The use of stone tools hafted to wood, bone, and antler handles is part of the new technological component of this emerging broad-spectrum mode of production. By 110,000 years ago, there was an explosion in variety and type of stone tools called Mousterian. Mousterian industries occur throughout the Old World and are a product of Homo sapiens neanderthalensis in the Near East and Europe. These modern humans lived in the higher regions of West Africa as well. Now, in addition to the use of hafted technologies and artifacts made of organic materials, is the manufacture of blade and deliberately blunted or backed blade stone tools. Now, these advances evolved in the African Paleolithic have come through archaeological fieldwork. Central and West Africa is understudied, not surprising when the scale of these two regions is considered. Central and West Africa consists of 6.1 and 2.6 million square kilometers respectively, and in combination covers 28% of the African landmass. So Central Africa stretches from the volcanic islands and vast lakes of the Rift Valley in the east to the Atlantic Ocean in the west. So that is a vast area. And from the Okavango Delta and Zambezi River in the south, which is down here, the easiest way to find it is to go on that Caprizi strip of Namibia, all the way over here to the Zambezi River. So we're talking about that area in the south and then up to the north to Lake Chad. At any rate, the massive lowland basins formed by the circuitous route of the Congo River and its tributaries, including the Kasai and Ubangi rivers, dominates it, and it includes several smaller river basins to the northeast. For example, the Ogooué River of Gabon, Lake Chad, and the Bight, B-I-G-H-T, of Biatra off the West African coast. In the eastern part of the Gulf of Guinea, that marks the eastern continuity of the sub-Saharan West Africa. Now, from that margin, the region stretches westward to the Atlantic coast of Senegal and north from the Guinea coast to the edge of the Sahara Desert. This is a region of low-lying plateaus through which the Niger River meanders northeast from Guinea before turning southeast and finally draining into the Atlantic Ocean in Nigeria. Archaeological interest in the deep prehistory of Central and West Africa began in the earliest part of the 20th century. However, a combination of human, ecological, and geomorphologic obstacles conspired against continuous systematic archaeological survey. So limited transport infrastructure, dense rainforest, and woodland vegetation, and periodic political upheaval presented barriers to most fieldwork projects designed to address specific research questions. Instead, archaeological inquiry and knowledge of prehistoric human presence is generally restricted to locations where modern developments like roads, settlements, and mining operations have enabled access. Now, these logistical impediments are made even more severe by tropical African soil conditions and climate. Acidic soil caused the rapid decay of plant, animal, and human remains, and the monsoon rains create gaps in the buried cultural sequences. Very little human skeletal material has yet been recovered from Middle Paleolithic context in Central or West Africa. The homocrania and postcranial fossils from Broken Hill in Zambia, on the margins of Central Africa, are among the few relevant specimens. Post-depositional disturbances of cultural sequences still buried mean archaeologists are struggling to reconstruct these basics. Nevertheless, we can examine field results from a few sites. Important for us are the 270,000-year-old advanced blade tools and pigments at Twin Rivers in Zambia, and the 80,000-year-old carved fishing harpoons from the site of Katende in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, these fill in the recent gaps in the chronology of the Central and West African Middle Paleolithic technologies, ranging from the very old dates from the sites of Twin Rivers in Kapthuran, Sai Island, and Bete, where dated sequences indicate the emergence of the distinctive Middle Paleolithic toolkit by 300,000 BP. Successions of post-Acheulean Lower Paleolithic industries form the basis of an emerging regional cultural sequence for the Middle Paleolithic at locations across Central and West Africa. For example, sites in the Dundo region of northeast Angola, the Kinshasa Plain in the DRC, and at Colombo Falls, Zambia, Asokona, Ghana, are examples. The proof lies in the exposed sections of massive excavated trenches. From older to younger, these cultures are the Sangoan and the Lupemban. On top of these are Upper Paleolithic cultures with microlithic technologies. The Chotolian industry is a local variant found in the southeastern part of Central Africa. It develops from an intermediate Lupembo-Chotolian culture containing elements of both late Middle Paleolithic and early Upper Paleolithic technologies. The Sangoan, Lupemban, and Chotolian were respectively named after type sites at Sango Bay, Uganda, Lupemba in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Bena Chitolo in the DRC, and all were identified initially by Desmond Clark. The Sangoan and Lupemban archaeological fieldwork projects of the 1950s and 1960s attempted to make real progress toward the construction of a reliable Paleolithic sequence for Central and West Africa. The Sangoan industry was found to overlie the Acheulean at the sites of Songezi in Uganda, Sokochona in Ghana, Colombo Falls in Zambia, and these sites display a remarkable departure from the refined symmetry of late Acheulean hand axes. The Sangoan was characterized as a rugged toolkit dominated by thick and heavy biface tools, including core axes, picks, choppers, and core scrapers. All were shaped roughly by striking a few flakes from large cobbles of stone. The Lupemban was found to sit above the Sangoan at Colombo Falls in Zambia and included bifacial lanceolate points, core axes, level wall points, and blade tools. At sites across Central Africa, there are Upper Paleolithic assemblages above Middle Paleolithic industries. And these were identified as informal quartz-based industries and as Schutzhüllen toolkits based on the continuation of lithic artifacts of the Central and West African Middle Paleolithic. These being the large Sangoan type pick from Kamafufo, Angola, a prepared Paleolithic point, a convergent PCT point with a faceted platform, a blade with lateral retouch backing, a double-ended bifacial lanceolate point of lupin bond type, a bifacial corax of lupin bond type, a transit point, a small PCT point, and a prepared core suitable for level wall flake removals, and bifaces in smaller, more delicate forms, as well as segments, petit transits, backed pieces, and points finely retouched by the pressure technique. The absence of undisturbed archaeological sequences spanning the period between the lupin bond and the Upper Paleolithic means lupin bond technologies in southwest Central Africa gradually phased into the Schutzhüllen. In this evolution, lupin bond tools became smaller and more refined, with toolkits featuring an increased number of Schutzhüllen type petit transients and microliths. There is the Gombe Point site located on the banks of the Congo River in modern-day Kinshasa, which is the capital of the DRC, that shows a succession of cultures that formed the basis for a detailed framework for the Paleolithic in Central Africa. At the base of the excavated sediments was a culture named the Kalinian that was dominated by large, minimally worked, Acheulean-like bifacial implements along with some flake tools, and above this a culture characterized by a smaller flake-based technology consistent with the Middle Paleolithic, recovered alongside a refined dagger-like bifaces to which the name Chacotian is applied. Higher up in the sediment there is an assemblage containing microlithic artifacts of Upper Paleolithic type named the Andolim. Despite the different names given to them at that earlier time, these stone tool assemblages remain roughly equivalent to the Sangoan, lupin bond, and Schutzhüllen industries known since the 1950s. A series of sites on the Kinshasa plain near Gombe Point have revealed deep sequences of poorly stratified sandy soils exhibiting subtle changes in Sangoan and lupin bond technologies over time, based on an apparent trend toward smaller and more refined biface tool forms. There appear discrete lower, that is older, and upper or younger phases within the Sangoan and lupin bond. These are, in short, meaningful similarities between the more heavily disturbed Middle Paleolithic sites are found in a tropical forested interior of lowland Central and West Africa, and at a handful of less disturbed archaeological sequences excavated on their woodland margins. Located on the periphery of Central Africa are the Muguruk, Twin Rivers, and Colombo Falls sites that provide evidence that the general regional sequence of Acheulean, Sangoan, lupin bond grading into the Upper Paleolithic holds throughout. At the southern end of Lake Tanganyika in northeastern Zambia, the type site of Colombo Falls, in particular, provides an essential sequence for the Central African Middle Paleolithic, here overlying a series of stratified Acheulean layers with the abundant hand axes, cleavers, and rarely preserved organic materials, are archaeological horizons representing the Sangoan and lupin bond. Now these are separated from the Acheulean and from one another by sandy horizons that ensure only extremely limited mixing has occurred in the ground between these industries. So the essential integrity of this sequence has been retained and is supported by technological differences between the two excavated technologies. Low numbers of diagnostic Middle Paleolithic artifacts, such as level wall points and blade tools, are found in the Sangoan horizons, and these stand in contrast to the lupin bond levels by an abundance of Middle Paleolithic tools made by the level wall methods alongside bifacial blade and backblade tools. Better stratigraphic controls at these peripheral sites indicates that although heavily disturbed, difficult to define or date, and poorly understood across most of Central and West Africa, Sangoan and Lupinbaum Middle Paleolithic technologies are valid prehistoric cultures. Since the mid-1990s, new excavations at several sites located across Central and West Africa, including Twin Rivers, Say Island, Mosumo Birame, Unjugu, and Bete 1, provide new light upon which future Middle Paleolithic research might build. At the collapsed cave of Twin Rivers, the Lupinbaum is capped above and below by layers of limestone that isolate that industry from any older or younger cultures and includes advanced backblade technologies. Say Island has a deep, datable stratigraphic sequence, giving an accurate chronology for the Central African Middle Paleolithic. Its stone tool assemblages separated by sterile sands have clear affinities to the Sangoan and Lupinbaum. This site promises to clarify the nature and degree of connections between the Middle Paleolithic in Central and West Africa and that of North and Southern Africa. Work at Mosumo has provided important new information about the Middle Paleolithic in Central Africa. Here the context includes a Middle and to Upper Paleolithic transitional assemblage with small bifacial foliate points that reflect a late expression of the Lupinbaum. The Birimisi site in Ghana closes an important gap between Central and West Africa with its series of level wall tools accompanying a few Lupinbaum lanceolate artifacts, thus forming a bridge between the two regions. And further to the west, at the Unjugu site and Bete 1, we have datable sequences for the Middle Paleolithic in West Africa. Radiocarbon dating of the beginning of the transition to the Upper Paleolithic is about 45,000 BP. Succinctly put, the Middle Paleolithic dates from 400 to 45,000 BP in Central and Western Africa. And this is a concluding comment to all of this. Remember that these primitive communists have found that resolving the problem of having too much surplus social product and the creation of dissolutional and centrifugal anti-social tendencies is best handled for them by moving into areas that have more challenging, a sufficient amount of challenge to absorb all of the labor and time that might otherwise have gone into creating surplus social product. So much so that they have invaded what are extremely difficult places to live in the central and western part of Africa. They've gone clear across here by 2 million years ago, through the Caucasus to the Himalayas. And all of this is part of the same thing. It's all part of a probably unconscious effort to reduce the amount of surplus social product that can be possibly created and then end up in the hands of individual families, clans, or even tribes. And so that concludes this, and we're going to move on to the Neolithic Revolution in Central and West Africa in the next lecture.